Hi, it's Dee Dee from Healthy Hearing Loss. Welcome back and Happy New Year. I was going to tell you how to be a highly functional student in a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner program, but I'm not going to do that because I had a problem. I will reveal that problem, but I want to tell you the journey and how I discovered about the problem in the first place. It will be in a form of a story, and we know that stories are really important to understand ourselves, understand the world around us. They can present in writing, they can present in movies, TV shows, or you can just tell them on a camera like this, like I am doing today. I've had this story circling in my brain for quite some time, but I'm the only one that's heard it. It's only in my head. So I decided today was the day that I was going to tell you. Talk about vulnerability. So I have this snapshot. It's like you're taking a camera and you just snap it, right? And you have a picture. At that moment, when you look at that picture, you can remember that precise moment, or you can kind of remember events that happen around it, before it, after it, whatever, right? Say I have this picture that I captured about 4 to 6 months ago while I was working in a clinic. I decided that that was going to be the beginning of my story. So as we know, there's a beginning, middle, and end to all stories, and I needed to go back and find out where that beginning was. So that's what we're going to do. But I will tell you, as I was reflecting back on this story, I realized that there were some emotional and mental difficulties that were coming up for me, and I had no idea where they originated from. And because I don't know where they originated from, I have a hard time expressing my feelings into words. That way, I will have to revert to something else. So I will probably be using metaphors, pictures, videos, frameworks, that type of thing to show you what my brain is thinking or seeing. You can see your brain, right? And then also to mention that capture picture in the clinic is when I was working as a family nurse practitioner, just so I keep that straight. Psych, family, blah. I'll give you a little sneak preview of one little problem is when I do recognize a problem, I tend to overthink it. And when I overthink it, I will definitely alter or twist that story into something negative maybe, or something that it's not real, it's not the truth, that type of thing, because you just lose the details over time. You lose the richness, the colors about that snapshot when you go back and, look at it too much, right? Oh, yeah, you get what I'm talking about, right? So the best thing I can do when I want to avoid overthinking is to meditate. Now, I'm not one that can sit and just let thoughts go away. Like I just sit and hope they go away. They never do. I mean, I think many, many people, if not all people, except for the experienced Buddha, cannot sit there and let their thoughts just go away. So I have to do a different process. I like to do visual. So visual to me looks like this. I'll be meditating in the chair. I will get myself nice and comfy. I will allow myself to move myself around to a point where I am letting go of stress in areas that I usually hold tension, generally in my jaw, my shoulders, my neck. I will pretend that there are clouds going up overhead and I'm just throwing words from my mind into the clouds and they drift away. As they drift away, the ones that are important will circle back around over my head and drop them back in my head. But the ones that are not important, they'll go away. That's how I visually think about it. Does it work? It works for me. Will it work for you? I don't know unless you try it. If I'm not doing that, I'm doing guided meditation. I like having somebody guide me through mental, visual journey, walking the beach, going through the woods, picking up something special. I like being told good words and that I'm good enough. Some people like to use mantras. I've done mantras before. I only do that if I was really like in a place where I just can't go sit and do my normal meditation. I will say a word over and over again during a meeting that's pissing me off, that type of thing. I said I wouldn't swear. Is pissing me off a swear? I don't think so. We'll leave it. Now we're going to go ahead to the story. I tried my best to come up with the story in sort of like note. And I'll tell you, my story is not easy, because every problem wouldn't be a problem if it was easy. I think The most important thing about my problem is trying to understand it, unravel it, and present the truth behind it or underneath it to try to understand how do I get rid of the problem. Oh, at the end, I'll tell you some things I did do. I just told you one. So if you want to stay at the end of the video, I'll tell you about some more ones. One of them's really fun, but you won't know until you watch the end of the video. I'm going to be very honest and open and transparent about how I feel about my problem. My problem does not reflect how somebody else would feel. If you are somebody that grew up with hearing loss as a child, this may make you feel very uncomfortable when I talk about this story. And I want you to be good to yourself. If you start to feel, just stop the video. You can come back to it later if you want. But if you're feeling good, you continue to watch it. Just make sure you take care of you first. While you're at it, can you subscribe and hit the like button, the bell, all that stuff down there, and comment in the description below if any of this resonates. The story is going to be like a book. No, it's a short story. It's going to be in chapters, and I did that specifically because I wanted to keep them in topics in sequence and not go off sequence, because I can do that because remember, I overthink. Chapter 1, the clinic. I remembered introducing myself to a 40-year-old male presenting at the clinic for difficulty sleeping. As I entered the room, I noticed he had an old, worn-out rucksack next to his chair on the floor. He was sitting looking at his phone, wearing a hoodie, and looked unkempt. I extended out my hand to properly introduce myself, but he didn't look into my eyes. I placed my laptop and my pad of paper and pen on the desk and began my assessment. He proceeded to explain his difficulties with sleeping while living at the shelter, and I typed in my notes to capture his history and troubles. While listening, I began to formulate diagnoses and planned to offer him a sleep aid. But he said something that struck me. I don't know. I just can't get away from the demons in my head. I shut my laptop and leaned forward, offering him the opportunity to talk while I just simply listened. His story was incredibly troubling and sad. I just sat and listened without interrupting. Slowly, he began to lift his head. He looked me in the eye and said, "Thank you for listening to me." He agreed to see me in 2 weeks, but he declined a referral to a counselor in the meantime. He says, "I have trouble trusting people, and I just want to talk to you. You are kind." I have and will most likely encounter more people experiencing mental health symptoms. So this is what pointed me to explore educational opportunities to learn more about behavioral and mental health disorders. So that is the reason I went into a psychiatric nurse practitioner program, so that I can be better prepared to help many people in the future. So I was accepted into a local university and began my studies. So when we reflect back to that story, can you physically feel yourself sitting there, just being mindless on your computer, typing your notes? And then if you are paying attention enough, if you listen to very important phrases like, "I can't get the demons to stop talking in my head." Those are very profound words. They're troubling words. Stop everything you're doing and just listen. This goes for the client, that goes for your friends, it goes for your family. So I think that is a snapshot moment where I just stopped and I realized, okay, that's one snapshot. Now to chapter 2. Chapter 2 is school. During my first semester, I studied hard, but when I got a terrible grade several weeks into the semester, I read the comment from one of my professors. I asked myself, why am I having such a hard time? And immediately became dysregulated. This is a new word I learned from the Crappy Childhood Fairy on YouTube. Go check her out. Dysregulation is a term used to describe an emotional response that is poorly regulated and does not fall within the traditional accepted range of emotional reaction. My mind was going in many directions, and I just couldn't get my brains to stop forming a negative narrative. I found myself thinking, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough. But then I got angry because I thought they are out to get me. I had never thought this way before and was very curious as to why. I got even angrier knowing that the negative thoughts were not true, but I had to figure out what the heck is going on in my head. Did you ever have that moment when you felt like you were dysregulated? Dysregulation usually happens after a trigger, and my trigger is getting a bad comment from my teacher. She provided a criticism, not constructive criticism, just a straight out forward criticism. And it struck me as, yes, the bad grade probably preceded that, but it was the comment afterwards like, what did I do wrong? And you're not telling me what I can do to be better. Just thinking about that moment can make me feel a little flustered. At a time like that, we just stop and we go somewhere else. We can meditate, you could write, you can breathe, go take a walk, right? Pet your dogs. Unconditional love, you can't beat it. Chapter 3, Journal. I detoured to the self-help path and found my journal. I remembered the iceberg effect. With the exposed iceberg, it's what is seen or known, the conscious mind. Diving in the water reveals a larger area that is not normally seen or paid attention to, the subconscious mind. Remembering this, I knew I had some work to do. I also recalled the tree metaphor. What is exposed is living and can be seen. What is not seen is beneath the ground, down in the dirt, the roots. The roots hold our developmental history. I need to find my root cause of my anger and self-doubt. I had trouble coming up with the words to explain my emotions and discovered the emotional wheel. I first needed to go into my subconscious mind, then label the feelings to help me conceptualize the overall theme to my internal world. 3 themes popped up: anger, fear, sadness. I then asked myself, why am I this way? This is when I learned about the ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. So I researched all about it. Now the ACEs are important to understand. However, it will be for another video. I also studied experiences as a child growing up with hearing loss. When it comes to being a child that grew up with hearing loss, I realized that being mainstreamed in the 70s, I was traumatized in many ways that actually hindered my cognitive and emotional development. So a lot of my roots as a child have been broken. This is where we have that inner child thing, right? This happened because of the language deprivation and cognitive neglect. None of this was on purpose, of course, but because people didn't know what to do with deaf kids back then, I didn't get the accommodations I needed. I needed to understand the consequences of not getting accommodated. A little sore spot. Yeah, so I think when we go back and we look at ourselves growing up as a child with hearing loss, whether it's back in the 70s when they just about realized that all deaf kids shouldn't just all go to deaf school. There were some of them that had residual hearing that could function, and they mainstreamed them into hearing schools. So you had some that went to deaf and some that went to hearing. And that was a very troubling time because just as they were announcing that or had passed a law for that, I was one of the first ones to go. So I was the only deaf person in my school. Were you the only deaf child in your school? Comment below, because I don't want you to feel like you're alone. Yeah, that's troubling. Let's go on to chapter 4. How to get re-regulated. Yep, we're going to just regulate ourselves again. So when you get triggered at something and you get dysregulated, you get that, you have to know right then and there how to regulate yourself. Do you need to talk to somebody? Do you need to do something that relaxes you? Do you need to expend the energy? Well, I'll tell you what I did, and it's worked phenomenal for me. First thing, yoga. Second thing, biking. Biking. I just feel the air going through my hair, and I feel the air on my skin, and I just feel wonderful. Just wonderful. Hiking. You can just look at the trees, listen to the birds, see the stream or the waterfalls. Just wonderful, and hopefully see wildlife. That's always a fun thing. And then I love to run. Run is it's a little bit more strenuous in my mind. It takes a lot more work, so I will try to find hills. Hills are my favorite. I'll take my dog sometimes and it'll just go crazy. And I sweat a lot when I run. And that just gets rid of that extra energy. And another really good, this is the one I was talking about. The good one that just gets so much rage out, it's called the Rage Room. It was unbelievable. Throwing things, using a bat, a crowbar, a sledgehammer, a hammer, throwing things, breaking things, screaming. They had music so loud in that Rage Room. My best friend and I were in there. We were just screaming and throwing because we've known each other. We don't care what each other does because we accept each other 100%. Crazy best time ever. I was in there for about an hour. talk about it, that sweat. My heart was racing, everything was just out. Walked out of there, it felt like I just ran a marathon. That's what my best friend quoted too. We both felt like we just ran a marathon. Now the flip side, that is to get that extra energy out, right? Now is the calming. So again, yoga on the extra energy is like hot yoga. That's what I mean by using yoga in that sense, that hot yoga that gets that extra, you just sweat out all the bad stuff. But then the flip side, when you want to do the calming, gentle yoga, you can go and do 1,000 videos on YouTube with Yoga by Adrienne. She does a 30-day challenge every year. Check it out. I'm doing one right now. The other thing is meditation. Finding that quiet place, getting aromatherapy and getting a candle going on, meditating and just allowing yourself to calm. Another thing you could do is perhaps drawing. I like to draw, paint, anything that makes you feel like you're zoning out and you're just calming and just allow these thoughts to go away. And then there's talk therapy with a counselor. I don't particularly care for talk therapy all the time, but I respect it when I just have some superficial stuff that I just want to talk about and kind of redirect. I like talk therapy for that, but the most important thing that's helped me is EMDR. Eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I'm telling you, it works. It works wonders. It's also been researched, so it is shown to help with anybody with PTSD. I myself know I have chronic PTSD. I grew up with a lot of adverse childhood experiences, as well as I was traumatized a lot as a child with deafness. So it doesn't matter. The past is the past, but you have to recognize the past and know why you are responding or what are your coping mechanisms are, why you get triggered. I think the most important thing is being able to remember your past in the sense of, yes, I have trauma, and that is not my fault. It's just important now as an adult to figure out what triggers you to become dysregulated. I'm specifically talking about a child with hearing loss. You know, there are going to be times where you're isolated and not feeling part of the community or part of the society or your groups or whatever it may be. And how do you fit in? Now, I think it's really important to accept who you are as somebody with hearing loss or deafness or however you label yourself. Everybody labels themselves differently. It's knowing what triggers and finding strategies to help you. That was sort of a story, you think? No, it's the end. No, it's actually not the end. Hold on. No, I have sort of a bonus. It's not a bonus, but the end tail of the story goes like this. When I was going to psychiatric nurse practitioner school, and my teacher gave me criticism, not constructive criticism, just plain outright criticism. It reminded me when I was a child in school growing up, whether it was first grade, third grade, fifth grade, where I had very mean teachers, and I'm talking mean. They were really mean. You're not listening to me. You didn't hear what I said. That's not what I said. Bad girl, you did that wrong. It was never backed up with, this is what you did, why didn't you understand, this and that. When I went to school, they just approved the transition from going from a deaf school to a hearing school. So basically it's this. I was probably one of the only and probably the first deaf person in that school system, or many school systems, because I moved a lot in my time. But yeah, they didn't know what to do with a deaf kid, and they were mean. They just was, I wasn't acting like a normal hearing person. Whatever. So that caused a lot of trauma for me. You see what that is? That's part of the story. The story is that I recognized that I was triggered by something my current school did because something bad happened to me growing up. It's in my blood. It's in my brain. It's mapped that way. Those are the broken roots in my head that were not, nurtured and guided and all that kind of stuff. So I have a lot of broken roots that I need to reconnect and regrow. It's when you think about the neurobiology of your brain, when you're not learning appropriately as a child, it gets fragmented and we just need to rewire it. And so as long as you learn your triggers that get you dysregulated, you can then find ways to re-regulate. You can't change the past. What happened has happened. but I'm not going to let it go because that's helping me. I don't want to retell the story over and over again because it makes me more triggered. And I believe that talking makes it worse. It's learning how to regulate. But I don't want to forget that because I want to make sure that I understand that my triggers are not my fault. So if you have something similar, just know it's not your fault. Okay, it's not your fault. Now you can go ahead and comment down below if you resonate with any of us, and take care of yourself. Make sure that you're feeling good, and that's it. That's the end. Huh?